Hi everyone, and welcome to the first installment of my series on how to make your very first video game. Making games is one of the most challenging but rewarding hobbies that can turn into a career if you put in enough work. I've been making games for just over 10 years, and I want to use this series to pass on some of what I know about making games. Over the course of the next few videos, I'll be teaching you everything you need to know to make a really simple game I like to call Space Battle. It's similar to a lot of the fixed shooter arcade games from the late 70s and early 80s, like Space Invaders and Galaga, where you control the ship at the bottom of the screen and fire up at enemies as they come towards you. As you can see, it's a pretty simple game, and there's lots we could add to it, like heat-seeking missiles that the player has to dodge and fire at, a boss ship that comes in after a certain amount of time, or even just different kinds of enemies and different kinds of bullets. But the point of this series isn't to make a feature-rich game that's ready to be published and sold. It's to make your first game. A lot of people get caught up in the ideas stage of making games, planning out elaborate storylines and huge worlds for their players to explore. But when it comes time to actually make the game, they lose motivation when they realize how much work it's going to take to make a game that big. So in this series, for your first game, I'll be recreating this exact game, step by step, and by the end of it, you'll have created a fully functional video game that you can show off to your friends and family. Going through the full cycle of development, even with a really simple game like this, is going to give you the opportunity to see what each stage looks like, and let you confidently say that you built your own game from start to finish before you tackle a more ambitious project. At its core, this is going to be a programming tutorial, but even if you've never written a line of code in your life, you can follow this tutorial. I'll be explaining every step as we go, even some of the basics of the code that we're writing. There's lots of moving parts that go into the process of making a game, and writing code is one of the most important ones to have at least a baseline understanding of. There's tons of different engines and programming languages to choose from when you're making a game, and picking the right one to use is a difficult process, one that some developers never even make it out of. There's a few different choices to make, and the kind of game you're trying to make will make a big difference in which choices you end up making. The two big choices you typically make are which programming language you'll write your code in, and what engine you'll use, if any. There's kind of a chicken or the egg situation between these two choices sometimes, where choosing a certain engine might limit you to a certain set of programming languages, or choosing a certain language will force you to use an engine or tool that's compatible with that language. For this series, I'm going to be writing my code in JavaScript and using HTML5 canvas to display the graphics in a web browser. I'm opting not to use an engine like Unity because my goal with this series is to teach you a lot of different core game development concepts, and a lot of engines take care of a lot of that for you. This gives us a little bit more control of what's going on under the hood, and also lets me explain more about how the game works. I think the tools in JavaScript and HTML5 canvas are some of the most intuitive ones out there for making games, especially if you haven't written any code before. If you are looking to learn how to use an engine like Unity, there's tons of other great YouTubers making content, like Brackeys and Blackthornprod, who would be a great fit. Before we start writing code, I want to run through the tools I'll be using so you can download them before we get started, and be ready to follow along with each step. I'm going to be using the Atom text editor made by GitHub. I'll have a link in the description for where you can download it. I'll also be using Node.js for a few different things that I'll explain as we get further in, so just make sure you have it downloaded and installed. Finally, you're going to want some kind of image editing software that's at least a step up from MS Paint, so I'm going to be using Paint.net, or if you're not on Windows, GIMP would also be a great option. We'll start programming in the next video, setting up our canvas and adding the ability to move our character back and forth with the arrow keys. That's it for this video. See you next time.